There's a special kind of silence when the people you raised start planning your exit. I was walking past the hallway when I heard it, whispers, hushed and fast like they knew I might be listening. "We need to list it before he gets too stubborn," Melanie said. My foot froze mid-step. David's voice followed. "He won't understand. We'll tell him it's for the best, less space, less stress." I stepped back into the shadows. "You really think he'll just agree?" she asked. A pause. David exhaled. "He won't have a choice." I backed away before the rage showed in my breath, walked into the kitchen, poured myself a black coffee with shaking hands, and sat down at the old wooden table. The one I built. The one where we used to do Sunday crosswords after church. The one where my wife used to laugh while icing her lemon cake. The back door creaked open. "You heard." David stood stiff in the doorway, arms crossed. "I heard enough," I said quietly. Melanie slinked in behind him, wearing that plastic smile that made my teeth grind. David took a seat across from me. "Dad, we were going to tell you tonight." I looked him dead in the eyes. "Selling the house." He didn't flinch. "It's time. The maintenance is too much for you. We found a retirement apartment fully managed close to the clinic. You'll be comfortable." Melanie chimed in, placing a hand on my shoulder like I was a damn houseplant. "It even has bingo nights." I brushed her hand off. "This house," I said, voice low, "is where your mother and I spent 43 years together, where we raised you, where she took her last breath." David stood. "That was then, this is now. We're just trying to take care of you." "No," I said, "you're trying to take me out of the picture." Melanie scoffed. "That's not fair." I stood too. "You want fair. Fair was when I took double shifts at the mill to afford this place. Fair was when I skipped her funeral lunch because I couldn't afford both the coffin and the food." David looked away. "This house isn't a burden," I said. "It's all I have left of her." A silence fell between us, thick as tar. Then David muttered, "We're selling the house like it or not." Just like that. Like my voice, my history, my sacrifice meant nothing. He walked out. Melanie followed, but not before offering one last insult. "It's not personal, it's practical." The door shut behind them. I sat back down, my hand curled around the mug, cold now. I stared at the fridge where her handwriting still hung. "Don't forget your pills. Love you always." The ink faded but not gone. I didn't cry, I'd forgotten how. Instead, I listened to the ticking clock on the wall. Tick, 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 every second louder than the last, like time itself was counting down to my erasure. In that moment I realized they'd already made peace with cutting me out. They didn't want to move me. They wanted to delete me. I wish someone had told me stories like this sooner. Maybe I would have seen it coming. If someone's listening, don't let silence swallow your story. People need to know what betrayal really sounds like. I looked around the room. The fireplace she loved. The window she used to stare out of during storms. The mark on the floor where David knocked over his first bike. They weren't just planning to sell a house. They were planning to sell my life. But I wasn't dead yet. And I sure as hell wasn't going quietly. I looked at that ticking clock and whispered, "You're not the only one counting." When they stop talking to you, that's when you start looking at what they've already done. 3 days passed. No good morning, no coffee poured, no shared silence across the breakfast table. Just the click of keyboards, the thud of closed doors, and the occasional sound of Melanie laughing too loud at something that didn't feel like a joke. I started to notice things. A real estate brochure sticking out from the trash can, "Top dollar for your family home" in bold blue letters. A yellow sticky note half ripped with scribbles. "Photos by Fry, open house, ask Mr. Klein." They weren't waiting, they were moving. I dialed the bank. The music on hold droned like static in my ear until finally, "Hello, this is Susan. How can I help you?" I cleared my throat. I need to check on the title for 48 Tanglewood Drive. Is the primary deed still under Samuel Keller? A pause, fingers tapping. Sir, I'm going to need to transfer you to our records department. The line clicked. They hung up. Not a word, just silence. Silence means something when it comes from a bank. I sat in my recliner, the one with the faded armrest where Era used to rest her hand during Sunday football, and I felt something split open in my chest. Not pain, not yet. Just cold. Greg knocked around 5. Same time he always did on Wednesdays. Brought over a bottle of the cheap scotch we used to sneak in the barracks. Still wore that dumb leather hat with the frayed patch that read 2nd Battalion still standing. You look like hell, he said, settling into the kitchen chair across from me. I've had better weeks. He poured 2 glasses without asking. Melanie still pretending to care, he asked, sipping. I didn't answer. He scanned my face like we used to scan terrain, reading the unspoken signs. They forgot whose name built this place. I grunted, I haven't. He nodded and didn't press. That's the thing about old war buddies. We don't hug, we don't cry, we notice. And we sit in silence when silence is needed. After he left, I waited until the house was quiet again, until their laughter faded behind the bedroom door. I opened the hallway closet, pulled out the old brown file cabinet that smelled like mothballs and smoke. Years of paper. Every receipt from when I mixed concrete myself to lay the foundation. Letters from the VA. The contractor's estimate for the roof we never could afford. And finally, folded neatly, like a secret, my wife's last letter. If David ever forgets who you are, remind him what it cost you to raise him. Remind him, Sam. With love, E. I held it for a moment, let her voice steady mine. Then I kept digging. And there it was, tucked in the back of the deed packet, a clause I barely remembered writing, let alone enforcing. Transfer of ownership requires full consent of all deeded parties, including Samuel Keller, until death or notarized relinquishment. My hands trembled, not from age, but from heat rising in my chest. They couldn't sell it. Not legally. Not yet. I whispered, you tried to bury me while I was still breathing. People forget paper doesn't lose its memory, people do. I stacked the documents neatly, mortgage receipts, military service files, the clause. Tomorrow I'd make copies. Tonight I'd rest. But I knew something now I hadn't known 3 hours ago. They weren't just stealing a house. They were stealing a legacy. Mine. Hers. And they weren't going to get away with it. I placed the clause on the table, poured myself a bitter cup of coffee, and stared at the door like I was waiting for war. People who think they've already one stop watching their back. The garage smelled like oil and sawdust, and everything they wanted to erase. I was elbow-deep in a rusted toolbox, trying to find the one wrench that didn't strip bolts, when the side door burst open like she owned the hinges. There you are, Melanie snapped, stilettos clicking against the concrete. We need these boxes cleared out before the open house. I straightened slowly. Open house. There is no open house, I said flatly. She waved a piece of paper in my face. Actually, there is. I didn't flinch, just read. A real estate listing agreement, already signed, already scheduled, photos set for Monday, open house Friday, no mention of my name, just David's, just hers. Then I saw it. Kyle Levington. My throat went dry. Kyle was the real estate poster boy with gelled hair and a Range Rover, the same kid who beat David out for class president and never let him forget it. David used to spit his name like poison. Melanie smiled sweetly. He said he could get us full asking, maybe even more if we stage it right. I kept my voice low. David signed this. He was going to tell you tonight. You've been so emotional lately. She adjusted her blouse like that fixed the rot in her words. I nodded once, then went back to my toolbox. Hey, she barked, don't just stand there, we need this cleared. I looked up. You should leave, Melanie. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me. You're trespassing on a decision that's not yours to make. She scoffed. This is our house now. No, I said, it's not. She stormed out without another word. I waited until I heard the front door slam, then walked inside. I sat at the kitchen table. My hands rested on the listing paper. Kyle Levington's number was right there, clear as day. I picked up the phone. He answered on the third ring. Kyle Levington, Luxury Realty. How can I make your day better? It's Sam Keller. A pause. David's dad. I hear you're interested in a property. He chuckled. If it's the house I think it is, yeah. Everyone in the game knows about Tanglewood. Original construction, war vet story, people eat that up. You still buying outright? Depends. I leaned back in my chair. Name your best number. Another pause, then his voice dropped a notch. You serious? As a heart attack. I'll have my office draft an offer tonight. I hung up. Sometimes the best trap is the one they set themselves. That night, David came home late. Didn't even look at me as he passed through the kitchen. Melanie followed behind him, whispering fast in that frantic voice of hers. He saw the papers. I had to push it, David. We need this done before. The door shut behind them. I stayed at the table. Papers spread out like a poker hand. I wasn't ready to play yet. They thought I'd fold. They forgot I built this table with my own hands. And now I was selling it to the one man David couldn't stand to lose to. Kyle Levington. You should have picked a different shark, Melanie. This one already smells blood. When they treat you like furniture, they forget you're the one holding up the roof. Greg's truck rattled up my driveway like a war drum. I was already waiting by the door with a folder under my arm and my collar buttoned for the first time in months. She's ready, he said as I climbed in. Warned her you'd bring a storm. I'm just bringing the truth, I muttered. We pulled into the legal office, a modest building tucked behind a florist shop. The brass plate read Hannah Rhodes, J.D., sharp, clean, no frills, just like her. Inside, she shook my hand firmly. No fake smile, no patronizing tone. Mr. Keller, she said, Greg told me the basics, let's get to work. I handed her the folder. Deed, mortgage receipts, the clause. She read it once, then again, her brow lifted. This clause is solid. Upon your wife's passing, full authority defaults to the surviving spouse unless and only if that person has permanently vacated the property. I haven't left, I said, not for more than a few days since the funeral. Then they can't touch it, she said, grinning. They can't sell what isn't theirs. I nodded slowly. Melanie and David had me sign a few things after the surgery, told me it was insurance paperwork. Her face tightened. Power of attorney. Feels like it. They've been making calls, signing documents, acting like I'm already in a nursing home. Hannah flipped through the papers, then looked me in the eye. We can revoke it today. I'll draw it up now. She typed fast, printing with the kind of focus that reminded me of a young lieutenant in a war room. 10 minutes later, a fresh document slid across the table. Sign here, initial there. This strips them of any legal right to act on your behalf. And notarized, I asked. Office next door, let's go. The notary was a thin man with wire-framed glasses and eyes that didn't ask questions. He checked my ID, watched me sign, then stamped the paper with a satisfying thunk. Done. Hannah walked me out to the sidewalk. You've got control again, Mr. Keller. I nodded. Funny thing is, I never thought I lost it, I just stopped checking. She softened. That's how they get you. I looked up at the clouds, the first wind stirring in my lungs in what felt like weeks. They were ready to bury me in the guest room. Well, she said, tucking the papers into a plastic sleeve, you just dug your way out. Control doesn't mean yelling louder. It means having the last piece of paper that matters. I rode back home with the file on my lap, my fingers tracing the ridges of the notary seal like it was a medal of honor. Inside the house, Melanie was on the phone packing. Yes, Kyle, he's old school. He won't fight this. We'll stage the master as a yoga space. I walked past her without a word, went straight to the fireproof box, slid the revocation into its center, and locked it shut. My wife's voice echoed in my head. If David ever forgets who you are, remind him. I planned to do exactly that. The door clicked closed behind me, and for the first time in weeks, the floor didn't feel like it was shifting beneath my feet. You never forget the sound of a door they tried to slam on you, especially when you're the one locking it next. The cafe was quiet, a little too quiet, like it knew secrets were being exchanged at every table. I sat in the far corner, black coffee cooling in front of me, the amended deed folder resting beneath my hand like a loaded weapon. Kyle Levington walked in 5 minutes late, dressed like a man who expected to be photographed, jacket pressed, teeth white, confidence spilling into the room before he even pulled out the chair. "Mr. Keller," he said smoothly, "you've got style. I thought we'd be meeting at a Denny." I didn't smile. "You want the house or not?" He chuckled, slid into the seat, cutting right to it. "I like that." He ordered an espresso, stirred it slowly, then leaned in. "You know, your son and I, we don't exactly toast to each other." "I'm aware." He tried to block me once. HOA zoning thing. Cost me a $400K commission. Called me greedy white-collar trash at a charity auction. I've been waiting to return the favor. I slid the folder toward him. "Here's your chance." He opened it, scanned the notarized amendment, the original deed, the POA revocation. His brow furrowed. This is ironclad. No one sells that house without me, and I'm ready to sell." He blinked. "You serious?" "I'm asking $3 million. No haggle, no open house. You buy it as is. You keep my photos up till escrow closes, and you don't speak to David or Melanie." He leaned back and whistled low. $3 million. "You'll flip it for 4. He grinned. "Probably, but that's not why I want it." "I know." He extended a hand. "Deal." I shook it firm, no hesitation. Just like the day I enlisted. Revenge doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with a firm handshake and a non-refundable deposit. We stood up together. He clapped me on the shoulder. "I'll have my team wire the earnest money by end of day. Inspection waived. I already know the house." I looked him in the eye. "You're not buying drywall and carpet, Kyle. You're buying a message." "Oh," he said, slipping on his sunglasses. "And what a beautiful message it is." As I turned to leave, I glanced back. He was already on the phone, packing near the sugar station, voice low and urgent. Probably his bank, probably ordering wires, prepping title paperwork. Good. Let the wheels spin. I drove home slower than usual, let the engine hum under my hands like an old friend. Melanie was on the porch when I pulled up. She smiled like I was a lost pet who'd finally found its way home. "Hey," she called out, "did you pick up milk?" I held up a plastic bag. "Thanks," she said, walking back inside like nothing had changed. But everything had. The milk was just milk. But what I'd carried in the other hand, that was the deed to their silence. They were planning a grand opening. I was planning a final sale. It's funny how betrayal sounds polite when it's served with a side of mashed potatoes. The invitation came like a snake in a silk envelope. "Dinner tonight," David said, voice rehearsed. "Just us." I said yes with a smile and packed the file folder deeper under my coat. Their dining table hadn't changed. Same faded runner, same chipped salt shaker. Only now it felt like a stage. David stood as I walked in, gesturing toward my usual chair like it hadn't already been erased in their plans. "Dad," he said, pulling out the chair, "glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it." Melanie brought out the food, dry-baked chicken, undercooked rice, and an awkwardly full wine glass. She poured me water instead. "I know you prefer this," she said sweetly. I smiled, always looking out. They sat, clinked utensils. The silence dragged long enough to feel rehearsed. David finally cleared his throat. "We've been thinking about your health lately. You've had a few falls." "Once," I said, cutting him off gently, "and I caught myself." "Still," Melanie chimed in, "we just want what's best for you, somewhere with proper care, near the lake." David added, "We toured a place. Really nice, peaceful, full-time staff, lots of windows." My fingers curled around the water glass. "Sounds lovely." He relaxed too easily. I raised the glass, "To new beginnings." We clinked, they smiled. They thought I was surrendering. Sometimes, the only way to see what they'll do next is to let them think they've won. After dessert, a store-bought pie Melanie barely thawed, I thanked them again. "You've done a lot of thinking for me," I said as I stood. "I appreciate that." "Dad," David said, beaming, "we just want peace for everyone." "Oh," I said, patting his shoulder, "me too." At midnight, the house creaked with sleep. I moved like I did in the jungle, slow, sure, silent. The photo albums first, slid them into my duffel. Then the medals, folded neatly, boxed. My wife's Bible, pages worn at Psalm 71, tucked gently into my coat. From the hall closet, the memory quilt she sewed during chemo still smelled faintly of lavender and old books. Every item that had my name, my history, my blood, gone. No drawers left to tell them who built the place. No walls to echo my voice. Just drywall and empty frames. Back in the garage, I locked the duffel, took one last look around. The workbench I built, the scuffed floor where David dropped his first bike. All theirs now, at least in their minds. But the deed said otherwise. And tomorrow, the world would too. They tucked me into a future I never asked for, so I packed up the past they never earned. There's a kind of silence that doesn't ache anymore. It just confirms everything you already knew. My phone buzzed once. "Kyle, funds are wired, it's done." No ceremony, no drawn-out congratulations. Just 3 words that snapped a chain I'd worn too long. The bank was cold, sterile, quiet enough to hear every flick of the pen as I signed the final document. The notary didn't smile, didn't ask questions. Just stamped the page and slid it into a folder. "Congratulations, Mr. Keller," she said softly. "Escrow closed this morning." I nodded. It wasn't congratulations I needed. It was confirmation. I stepped outside, sun slicing across my face, and took a long, bitter breath. Back at the house, no, back at their house now. I parked in the driveway like any other day. Melanie's car was gone. David must have been at work. Perfect. I let myself in. The air was warm but unfamiliar. The walls still held the framed prints she bought at discount stores. Fake art, fake home. I walked through each room. Slowly, purposefully. The living room was stiff, soulless. The recliner I once read in now half covered with throw pillows that had no meaning. The dining room still had the scratch I'd made with my wedding ring years ago. I ran my finger along it. They never noticed. 2 busy measuring spaces for Pinterest tables. Down the hall, I paused where my wife used to tape up every Christmas card. For 22 years straight. Even after the kids stopped sending any. She believed in tradition, in people. Even when they didn't deserve it. I rested my hand on the spot. Cold drywall. Nothing left. In the bedroom, I stood at the edge of the bed I once shared with her. It was the only room they hadn't tried to remodel yet. Didn't matter, nothing in here belonged to them. Not anymore. I walked back to the kitchen, the last place she stood before the hospital took her in. Sunlight hit the table just right, like it always did mid-afternoon. I placed the manila envelope on the center of the wood. Inside, the official transfer documents. Signed, notarized, filed, irrevocable. On top, I pressed down a yellow sticky note, my handwriting still strong. Not yours to sell. Some legacies you pass down, others you take back. I stood there for a long time, just listening. No music, no laughter, no guilt, just stillness. Then I walked out, locked the door, not because I had to, but because it was no longer mine to walk freely into. The house wasn't gone, it was reclaimed. Betrayal cracks the heart, but justice shatters illusions. It started with the tires on gravel. Melanie's shrill voice cut through the quiet first. What the hell is this? Then David's bootsteps pounding across the driveway. Sold, he shouted. What the hell do you mean sold? From the VFW lodge down the road, Greg and I watched the scene unfold through the front window, whiskey in hand, like two veterans watching fireworks on the 4th of July. You sure they'll take the bait? Greg asked, raising an eyebrow. I took a sip. They already have, took it hook, line, and ego. Back at the house, Kyle was leaning against his car, polished sunglasses, expensive haircut, calm. David stormed up the front lawn, nearly tripping over a pair of taped cardboard boxes labeled kitchen, MELANIE. What's going on? He barked. Kyle didn't flinch. Afternoon, he said, slipping a folded copy of the deed into David's hand. Just finalized. I'm the new owner. Melanie's scream tore through the street like a siren. You can't do this. Kyle smiled. You'd be surprised what you can do when you're not a tenant. David ripped open the envelope, eyes darting across the signature line. His face drained as he saw my name. Not his. Not Melanie's. Just mine. They always thought silence meant consent. It didn't. It meant patience. David banged on the front door. Dad, open this damn door. You can't just take it from us. I wasn't inside. I was watching from a stool at the VFW, savoring every second. Greg chuckled and slid me a fresh glass. To poetic endings, he said. To well-documented ones, I replied. We clinked. Kyle stayed professional, even when Melanie tried to shove him. He held up both hands. You'll need to vacate the property. New locks go in by morning. Your belongings are boxed and in the garage. You're lying, she hissed. David pointed a trembling finger. He's bluffing. Kyle calmly pulled out his phone, swiped to a PDF, and tilted it toward them. Escrow transfer. Purchase finalized. Congratulations, you're guests on someone else's lawn. Melanie broke. This is elder abuse. Kyle smirked. Not quite, more like elder strategy. David was trembling now. I'm your son, he muttered, as if saying it made it truer. Funny how they remember the bloodline when the money's gone. Greg raised an eyebrow at me. You want to go rub it in. I shook my head. Let 'em marinate in the mess they made. Back at the house, David stood silent in the driveway, the deed fluttering slightly in his hand. Melanie collapsed onto a box marked holiday decor, front closet, sobbing. Neighbors peeked from windows. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. The sold sign glistened in the afternoon sun, red and final. The house didn't explode, their entitlement did. They thought calling me old would make me weak, but time sharpens memory, and I remember everything. David filed the complaint within 48 hours of the explosion. Said I coerced him. Said I lied. The state clerk must have laughed when they read it. The letter I received from the county office was short. No legal standing, no further action. Melanie went one step further, filed for elder fraud. Accused me of mental instability, manipulation, and deliberately sabotaging their financial future. That last part made Greg choke on his coffee. "You ready for mediation?" Hannah asked, her tone cool and clipped as ever. I straightened my tie. Been ready since they called me a burden. She smiled, "Then let's end it." The mediation room smelled like cheap carpet and peppermint mints. Melanie arrived first, overdressed, overconfident. David trailed behind her, lips tight, eyes down. I waited until the last possible second to enter. Same navy blue suit I wore to their wedding, polished shoes, wore medals still pinned because why the hell not? Melanie's eyes narrowed the second she saw me. "Nice costume," she sneered. I buttoned my jacket, fitting for a performance. Hannah started slow, calm, precise. Presented the notarized POA revocation, the amended deed, and Kyle's signed purchase documents. Everything watertight. Melanie fidgeted. David's leg bounced like a nervous child's. "You tricked him," Melanie snapped. Hannah tilted her head. "Do you have any evidence of coercion, Mrs. Halpern?" Melanie opened her mouth, then shut it. David finally spoke. "He never even told us what he was planning. That's not fair." I leaned forward. "You never asked. You just decided I didn't count anymore." They didn't want a conversation. They wanted silence and surrender. Melanie slammed her palms on the table. "You're a vindictive old man." The room went quiet. I turned to the mediator, then back to her. "No," I said calmly, "just a man tired of being erased." The silence that followed was different, heavier, a silence that agreed with me. Even the mediator blinked like he'd been slapped awake. 2 weeks later, we stood before a judge. Melanie wore black like it was a funeral. David didn't even look up from his hands. Hannah was all business. The judge asked for final remarks. Melanie sniffed, stood, and repeated the phrase, "Elder abuse, deception, punitive action." The judge turned to me. "Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Keller?" I stood slowly. "My wife and I built that home from nothing, brick by brick. I trusted my son with my legacy. He trusted someone else to erase me. I didn't fight out of spite. I fought to matter." The judge nodded, slow and sure. "Case dismissed," he said. "No damages, no fraud, and no further proceedings." Melanie gasped. David said nothing. A suit doesn't make a man respectable, but the way he wears it can remind people who they tried to forget. Outside, the sky was clean. No wind, no noise. Just the echo of a gavel still ringing in their ears. Justice doesn't raise its voice. It just walks out the door unshaken. When the truth finally crawls into the sunlight, it doesn't whisper. It rings. I didn't send the story to the press. I didn't have to. Public records told their own tale: property sale, deed transfers, court dismissal. The trail was plain. All it took was one bored reporter digging through weekly filings. And just like that, the headline ran on the second page of the county weekly. "Veteran outsmarts son in $3 million property flip." They used a photo of the house, with the sold sign still fresh in the lawn. Kyle must have handed it over. He loved the spotlight. I hated it. "Want a copy?" Greg asked, waving the paper at me as I walked into the VFW. I shook my head, let it burn out. "No way," he laughed. "This is better than a trophy." Next day, I found it taped to the inside of his garage, right above the old American flag he flew every Memorial Day. He wrote a single word in Sharpie underneath the headline: "Legend." They buried me in silence. The world dug me out with noise. First came the whispers at the post office. "You're the man from the paper, right?" Then at church. "Brother Keller, I saw what they tried to pull. You handled it with grace." And finally, the most uncomfortable moment. Betty Simmons from the Altar Guild leaned in during Potluck Sunday and said, "If you ever want to tell your story, my niece works at Channel 8. I laughed softly. I've said enough already. Melanie's humiliation arrived louder. She lost a listing contract the next week. A high-profile seller pulled out. "Bad press," he apparently told her. "Takes years to build trust, but only one headline to lose it." David fared no better. I heard through Greg that his poker buddies stopped returning texts. A couple guys at his old law firm unfollowed him on LinkedIn. Reputation is like glass. It only takes one drop for the cracks to show. I saw them once that week, at the grocery store. Melanie avoided eye contact. David spotted me by the bread aisle and walked the other way. He didn't even fake a smile. Just clutched the shopping cart like it was holding his pride together. Greg came over that evening, balancing a six-pack and a smug grin. "You see the new edit?" he asked, pointing to the garage. Under legend, he taped a second article. "Real estate agent under fire for misleading listing claims." Melanie's name was bold in the first paragraph. I took a long pull from the beer and stared at the paper. "I didn't want it to be like this," I muttered. Greg leaned against the workbench. "I know. But I didn't start it either." "No," he nodded, "you just finished it." It wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration, and dignity wears quiet better than shame. The house sat peacefully now. Kyle hadn't moved in yet, but he kept the lawn trimmed. Mail came on time. The porch light still flickered every night around 8. But something about it had shifted. It didn't feel stolen anymore. It didn't feel haunted either. It just felt settled. Sometimes justice doesn't roar, it just gets published. Some bridges don't collapse in fire, they dissolve in silence. He came at dusk. Always at dusk, like shame can't stand daylight. I was in the kitchen, steeping tea, when the knock came, hesitant, 2 short taps, then stillness. I didn't rush, let him stand there. When I opened the door, I didn't step out, just pulled the screen tight and leaned against the frame. David looked like he hadn't slept in days. His tie was loose, his knuckles scraped. His face, the same face I once cradled after a little league loss, was cracked with some new kind of defeat. "Dad," he said, "can we talk? Apologies aren't keys. Some doors don't open again." I didn't invite him in. He didn't ask. "I've been thinking about everything," he said, glancing past me like the house still belonged to him. "We didn't mean for it to go that far." My stare didn't waver. "We," I said. He hesitated. I mean me too. I just thought after Mom died and things got tight." I raised a hand. "You thought I wouldn't notice." "No," he said quickly. "I thought you wouldn't fight back." That landed harder than he realized. He dropped his eyes. I said nothing. The silence stretched. Only the porch light buzzed above us. "You gotta understand," he finally said. "Melanie, she pushed. She had plans. I went along with it because it felt easier than fighting." I watched his jaw twitch. "That's the problem, David," I said. "You spent your whole life going along with things." He blinked hard. "You think this is easy for me?" "No," I said. "I think it's too late." He leaned in, gripping the screen like he was trying to tear through years of betrayal. I missed the way things were. I looked at him, really looked. The way things were never should have included treating your father like inventory. He winced. I opened the screen just a crack, just enough to pass something through. A photo of him at 13, standing beside me with the birdhouse we built, smiling like his world had structure. He stared at it. "I don't remember this," he murmured. "I do," I said, "because it was the last time you built something instead of tearing it down." His shoulders sagged. "Please," he whispered, "just don't shut me out." I reached forward slowly. Closed the screen door. The latch clicked. I didn't slam it. Didn't yell. Didn't cry. Just locked it, calm and final. Forgiveness is a door with no handle on the outside. He stood there a moment longer, then turned, walked down the porch steps and into the dusk. No car waited, no wife beside him. Just the long walk of a man who burned the map and expected to still be welcomed home. Inside, I sat back at the kitchen table. Steam curled from my tea. And in the stillness, I felt nothing. Not rage. Not sorrow. Just the weight of clarity. That door didn't close out of anger. It closed because peace doesn't share a room with betrayal. Some men see a house. Others see the bones, the soul, the echo of a life lived. Kyle's text came mid-morning. "Swing by, place is almost done." I hesitated. It had been weeks since the sale. I hadn't set foot inside since. The thought of walking through what once was mine, now brushed in someone else's color, made my stomach stir. Still, I owed it to myself to see. He greeted me at the door with a paint-splattered shirt and a grin. "Thought you might want a peek before I stage it." "Stage it?" I raised an eyebrow. He smirked. "Changed my mind, not selling, I'm moving in." I blinked. "Really?" Kyle nodded. "Place has good bones and better stories." We stepped inside. The scent of fresh paint lingered in the air. Clean, sharp, layered over memories like a new coat on an old scar. New hardwood floors stretched across the living room, gleaming under soft lighting. The walls, once faded beige, were now a warm charcoal gray. It looked different, modern, lighter. But not cold. "Did a lot of the work myself," Kyle said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Could have flipped it, easy profit, but I dunno, the place stuck with me." I didn't speak, just took slow steps. The dining room table was gone, replaced by a smaller, sleeker piece. But the window, the one where my wife used to sit with her tea every morning, was still there, catching the same morning sun. "You didn't gut it," I murmured. Kyle shook his head. "Didn't need to, this place doesn't need to be erased, just honored." He walked over to the fireplace. Above it, still hanging from the same brass hook, was the old wooden plaque. Hand carved, cracked slightly at the edges, and still bearing the same verse. "Be still and know that I am God." My chest tightened. "She chose that after her diagnosis," I whispered. Kyle turned to me. "Didn't know that." "I offered to take it down when she got worse, said it was cruel. She said no, said it was for me, not her." He nodded. I dusted around it, couldn't bring myself to take it down. I swallowed hard. For all the slick suits and confident talk, Kyle had done something David never did. He listened. "You ever think they knew what they were trying to destroy?" he asked, keeping his voice soft. "No," I said. "I don't think they cared enough to find out." We walked into the garage next. Empty now but organized, tool racks, fresh paint. The oil stain from David's teenage Mustang was finally gone. "You want to leave anything behind?" Kyle asked. I shook my head. "Already took the memories, don't need the clutter." He chuckled. "Fair enough." Back in the hallway, he paused near the coat closet. "I found this behind the shelf," he said, handing me a small metal box. I opened it. Inside, my wife's locket, a dried rose from our 40th anniversary, and a folded photo of David as a boy, sitting on my shoulders. "I forgot this existed," I whispered, tracing the locket. "She kept it safe," Kyle said, "so I figured I should too." I looked at him. "You're not who I thought you were," I said. He smirked. Neither are you, I guess. We stood there in silence, two men bound not by blood but by respect. One who bought a house, one who reclaimed a legacy. It's not who owns the deed, it's who protects the roots. I stepped outside, the sunlight sharp but welcome. Kyle locked the door behind us, not possessively, just carefully. A stranger kept my wife's verse on the wall. That told me everything I needed to know about who deserved the keys. Some people only notice what they've lost when no one's left to listen. The voicemail came at 2:14 a.m. I was awake. I'd been sitting in the den, lamp on, book untouched, sipping lukewarm coffee. That old habit of waking before dawn, a remnant of my army days, never left me. Neither did the feeling that something always went wrong in the dark. The phone buzzed. I glanced down. Melanie. Against better judgment, I pressed play. Her voice was jagged, more gasps than sentences. You ruined everything. We were going to build, we had plans. How could you do this to us? A loud crash, something breaking on her end. Then a sob. You're a bitter old man, vindictive. Everyone's going to know what you did. Click. I stared at the screen for a long while, thumb hovering over save. I pressed delete instead. The next day, Greg showed up holding his phone, grinning like a schoolboy. Seen her Facebook lately? I raised a brow. She's gone full Shakespeare in meltdown mode, tragedy and betrayal and crocodile tears. I pulled out my tablet. Sure enough, Melanie had posted a string of rants. When people you trust stab you in the back, the scar lasts forever. Not all fathers are good men. We gave up everything for him, and he repaid us with betrayal. Every post followed by crying emojis, angry faces, but no comments. No likes, just digital silence. One old friend replied once, "Mel, did y'all try to sell the house behind his back?" That was it. After that, nothing. Over the next week, I noticed the rest unravel. Melanie's real estate profile quietly disappeared from the agency's website. Her name vanished from listings. A quiet removal, the kind meant to avoid bad press. A neighbor told me she was seen at the pharmacy crying over a phone call. Another said she tried to get her hair done on credit. David. Still silent. He hadn't called since the day I locked the door in his face. He must have known by now that nothing was coming back. Not the house, not the money, not my trust. Greg sat across from me at the VFW one night, a beer in his hand. "Think she ever gets it?" he asked. I shook my head. Some people aren't sorry for what they did. They're sorry they didn't get away with it. That same night, I scrolled through her page again. She posted a grainy selfie from her car, mascara smudged, captioned, "The devil comes dressed as family." No one replied. The silence was louder than any insult. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes tracing the plaque still sitting on my desk, my wife's favorite verse Kyle had carefully preserved. "Be still." That was the difference between Melanie and me. She raged. I waited. A few days later, I got another voicemail. Shorter this time. "I hope you're proud. You humiliated us. I hope you rot alone." I didn't even flinch. I forwarded that one to Hannah. She'd handle the harassment filing if needed. No words from David. But sometimes silence is more honest than any apology. I passed Melanie once at the grocery store. She looked through me. Not past me, through. Like she couldn't believe I was real. Like I wasn't supposed to be standing upright, content, carrying my own damn groceries. She turned the cart sharply and disappeared down the aisle. As I left, the young clerk bagged my items and said, "Hey, that story about the house. Was that really you?" I nodded once. He grinned. "That was badass, sir. Some storms scream and throw glass, but the quiet ones, They're the ones that end legacies. Melanie screamed into the void, but no one echoed back. The world moved on, and so did I. Some homes live on. Others let you go when you're finally ready to stop bleeding into their walls. I didn't mean to stop. I was on my way to the market, same route I always take. But something pulled me, like muscle memory with a pulse. My hands turned the wheel before my mind gave them permission. There it was. My house. Or what used to be mine. Now it sat behind a white picket fence Kyle must have installed. The yard was green again. Someone had planted marigolds under the windows. I hadn't seen flowers on that patch since '03. I rolled to a quiet stop across the street, engine humming like a whisper. There were toys scattered on the front lawn. A plastic dinosaur, a red ball. A kid's laughter floated out from an open window, choppy and high, the kind of sound that makes you forget your age for a second. It looked alive. Greg's voice echoed in my memory. Sometimes, the best revenge is knowing they can't touch what you let go of. The curtains had changed, light blue now, not Melanie's stiff gray ones. The porch had wind chimes. My wife always wanted wind chimes. I sat there longer than I should have. No one noticed me. No one came out screaming. No ghosts in the windows. No bitterness hiding in the corners. It was just a house. And it was finally free. Later that afternoon, I parked outside the cemetery. It was quiet, October breeze, sky like linen, birds overhead not too loud. I walked the path I knew by heart, gravel crunching beneath my boots. Her headstone hadn't changed. Still clean, still simple, just how she wanted it. I knelt down, my knees creaking. "It's done, sweetheart," I whispered. "They tried to take it, but I didn't let them." My throat tightened. I stared at the soil. My fingers grazed the edge of the stone. "You would have liked the new owners. There's laughter now. Flowers, not tension, not greed." I sat there for a while, no rush, no noise. Just wind and bone-deep quiet. Back at the apartment, I opened the blinds. The place was smaller, sure, but it had sun in every room. My recliner faced a row of pine trees. The neighbor's dog barked twice a day, on schedule. No one knocked on my door unless they meant it. No expectations, no manipulation, no pretending. I pulled a photo from the desk drawer, me and my wife, standing in front of the old house before the roof was even finished. She had her hammer in hand, still wearing that yellow bandana she used to steal from my tool bench. I framed it and set it by the window. A reminder of who built that house and why. My phone buzzed once. A message from Greg. "You still alive, old man?" I texted back. "Barely, you still ugly." His reply was just a laughing emoji. That night I fixed myself a plate of roast and potatoes, turned on the old jazz station, and let the brass notes fill the apartment. I wasn't lonely. Just alone. There's a difference. I passed by the mirror on my way to bed. For a second I paused. I looked light. Like something had been peeled off, peeled away. Like grief had stopped sitting in my chest rent-free. I thought losing the house would mean losing her, but it wasn't the house. It was the history, and I protected it. What remains isn't brick or memory. It's peace, and no one's taking that from me again. After the storm, there's not silence, there's stillness, and if you've earned it, it sings. My new mailbox went up this morning. Simple brushed bronze, no frills. Just 5 letters etched clean across the front. MY name. Not mine and Melanie's. Not David's add-on. Just mine. I stared at it for longer than I should have. There's something about seeing your name, undiluted, standing on its own, like carving it into stone, saying I was here. I mattered. I spent the morning in the yard, planted a rose bush just off the porch. It reminded me of her. My wife always said red roses were too loud, too proud. She loved the soft pink ones, the ones that bloomed quietly without begging for attention. I dug the soil with bare hands, felt every grain, felt alive. When I stepped back, sweat on my brow, dirt under my nails, I saw it. A little color against the world, a start. Inside, I made coffee the way I like it. No passive-aggressive low-sugar substitute. No complaints about too strong or too bitter. Just real hot coffee in a chipped mug, mine. I sat at the kitchen table with her letters again, the ones she wrote during her last year. Some were short, shopping lists turned soft with sentiment. Others were long, full of thoughts she never spoke aloud. Today, I read the one she wrote on our last anniversary. "If they ever try to erase you," it said, "remind them whose name built everything they're standing on." I smiled. The apartment isn't big, one bedroom, no stairs. But it's bright, breezy, clean. Every creak of the floorboard is mine. Every wall is honest. No walking on eggshells, no pretending. Greg came by around noon, carrying 2 cigars and a six-pack. "Figured you want a break in the porch," he said, patting the wooden rail like it was sacred. We sat under the awning, puffing like old sinners. "You did it, man," he said. "Clean, no yelling, no lawsuits dragging on, just checkmate." I shrugged, didn't feel like victory, just necessity. He nodded, "Sometimes they're the same." Hannah dropped by 2 days later with a gift basket. "From the firm," she said, "and from me. You're a good man, Mr. Ellis. You deserve to win." "Thank you," I said. "And you made my father very proud," she added, smiling. That one hit deep. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Kyle sent a Christmas card. Inside was a photo of the old house, now fully renovated, decked with lights. In the bottom corner, in a child's handwriting, "Thank you for the home." I stared at that line until the ink blurred. I started cooking again, not fancy, just hearty meals. Stew, pot roast, my wife's cornbread recipe. I almost forgot the extra honey drizzle she always added. Now I don't. The noise is gone now. No phone buzzing with demands. No backhanded favors disguised as concern. No guilt dressed in family ties. Just birds in the morning, the occasional car in the distance, wind through the trees, my own breath. Sometimes I wake in the middle of the night, not from nightmares but from habit, years of being needed, doubted, dismissed. But now the darkness doesn't accuse me. It wraps around me like a warm coat, whispers, "You're safe, it's over." Peace doesn't knock. You build the door, you write your name on it, and you wait. And one day it walks in and sits beside you. The rose bush bloomed this morning. Soft pink, quiet. Just like she liked. I sip my coffee, glance at my name on the mailbox, and smile. I'm not just home, I'm free.